Good morning, class. Welcome back. We were discussing in our last class about the effect of water table. Okay, so both method we discussed. Okay, what IS 6403 is suggesting and what general method is that. Okay, so both methods we have discussed, and also we have solved a few problems based on those concepts. Okay, so today I'm going to start a new concept that is how we can find out the bearing capacity if there is an eccentric loading. Okay, so inclined loading and eccentric loading are different. Okay, so this inclined loading anyway this taken care by inclination factor in our bearing capacity equations. But if you have an eccentric loading, then how to account for that eccentric loading? Okay, that we will see in today's lecture. Okay, so let us go to our PPT. So all of you can hear my voice, right? Please respond. And as well as you can see.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can see my screen also, right? Okay, so
Yes, sir.
let us go. Yeah. These definitions, everything we have seen. Okay, so today I will discuss about the eccentric loading. So eccentric loading, usually it will come into picture when if your column is that, see this figure, you see this is your footing reinforcement. So this is your footing reinforcement. Sorry. So, and your column is not at the center. Okay, so it is off by some distance. So these kinds of loadings are called as eccentric loading, eccentric footings. Okay, you see the column is not exactly at the center of your footing, so it is off by some distance. Okay, so those kinds of loading are called as eccentric loaded footings. Okay, so these kinds of situation will usually will come into picture when you are casting your columns for at the border of your property line. Okay, so suppose this is your property border of your property line, and whatever columns will come in that near to those border lines, they will have these kinds of eccentric loading, because if your column is exactly at the end of your property line, so you cannot put your foundation on other sides. Okay, so they will object. Okay, so they will put a case against you. Okay, so that's why what you have to do, whatever you want to do, everything you should be done in your site itself. Okay, so you can't put column and see if you put the concentric footing, then what will happen, half of the foundation will have to be placed in other site. Okay, so which is not possible. Okay, so in those circumstances these kinds of eccentric footings will come. Okay, so usually when the eccentric footing will come, what will happen, your normal whatever Terzaghi's bearing capacity theory or IS 6403, whatever equations they given, in those equations some corrections you have to apply. So for example, your IS 6403, what is the equation? K net ultimate equal to CNC SC DC IC plus Q NQ minus 1 SQ DQ IQ plus 0.5 gamma B N gamma S gamma D gamma I gamma. Okay, so this is the bearing capacity equation from IS 6403. Okay, so for this equation, how we applied a water this W dash I would write. Okay, so this is the correction factor for the water table. How we applied a correction for the water table. Now similarly, we have to apply some corrections if you have these kinds of eccentric loading. This equation, whatever this equation is, holds good if your loading is concentric. If you have eccentric loading, then you have to apply some corrections. Okay, so what are those corrections we will see in today's lecture. So first of all, a little bit brief about eccentric loading. What is eccentric loading, and in what circumstances this eccentric loading will come into picture. Okay, so this is my footing. This is my footing, and this is my center of your footing. Okay, so instead of your column is coming exactly at the center, it is off by certain distance. Okay, so that distance is EB. So EB, eccentric in the breadth direction. Okay, so this is in the breadth direction. So I'm talking only now in the one direction. Okay, so eccentricity in only one direction. Okay, so that is in the breadth direction. So in the later stage, I will I will also explain if the eccentricity in both direction. Okay, that means in breadth direction also eccentricity is there, as well as in the length direction also the eccentricity is there. Okay, so that how to calculate bearing capacity in those circumstances also we will discuss in our later stage, the later stage of this lecture. So the eccentric footing results from the condition that the load that load is normal to the footing. Okay, so this load is normal to the footing, but it is applied off the center of the footing. This means that the footing will be subjected to some bending moment. So when your column is not exactly at the center of your footing, then what will happen? Some bending moment will come into picture. Okay, so this figure is equivalent to this one. That means whatever Q you are applied with certain eccentricity, that is EB. So you apply this Q into EB as some moment at the center of your column, at the center of your footing. So My is nothing but your EB into Q is my My. Okay. So once movement will come into picture, if the movement is there, then what will happen? Your stress distribution is not uniform. Okay. So earlier, if you have a concentric loading, what will happen? Your stress distribution will be uniform. Stress distribution beneath the foundation is uniform. Once the movement come into picture, then your stress distribution is no longer uniform. Okay, so it's a trapezoidal. You see, one side on which direction the movement is applied, you have a maximum intensity, and on the other side you have a minimum intensity. Okay, so Q max and Q minimum you have to calculate first. Okay, so these are the stresses applied on the foundation once you have a eccentric loading. Okay, if you have a concentric loading, then uniform stresses will be there. Okay, so whatever Q max will be there on the one side, same Q max also will be there on the other side. Okay, so but if you have a eccentric loading, the stress distribution is not uniform. Okay, it's a trapezoidal. So this is your see, this is in plan view. In the plan view, this is the foundation. So this is the foundation, and this is your center of your footing or foundation, and this is your column position. Okay, so this column is off by some distance. So this is EB. Okay, so eccentricity in the breadth direction. If I place somewhere the foundation is here, then eccentricity in both direction it will come. Okay, that I'll come to that in later stage. So now we will concentrate only on the eccentricity in one direction. So there are two types of eccentricity will come into picture. One is your column itself is off by certain distance, that is E. That kind of eccentricity are called as geometric eccentricity. And there is another kind of eccentricity, that means your loading is inclined or loading is horizontal. Okay, so like in case of your, for example, if you have a retaining wall, I will come to that retaining wall in the third unit. Okay, so in the third unit we will discuss about retaining walls. So in the retaining wall, what will happen? We will have these lateral loads will be huge. So the lateral loads will come into picture. So that kind of eccentricity is called as mechanical eccentricity. So, but both eccentricity will be dealt in the same way. Both eccentricity will deal in the same manner. Okay, so how to calculate this Q max and Q minimum? First, I have to calculate this Q max and Q minimum. So Q max and Q minimum can be calculated by these equations. So Q by your breadth into length minus 6 times your movement divided by B square into L. That is your Q minimum. And Q max is Q by BL plus 6 times your movement divided by B square into L. Okay. So what is M here? M is nothing but eccentricity into the load, E into Q. Okay, so again, in the this stress distribution also, so if your eccentricity is less than b by 6, if your eccentricity is less than b by 6, then we will have a this trapezoidal kind of stress distribution. Okay, so if eccentricity is greater than b by 6, then we have this triangular shape. Okay, so here you may have some negative stresses also. You may have, if your eccentricity is greater than b by 6, then you may have some negative stresses. Okay, so these negative stresses should be avoided. That, see, this negative stresses means what is happening, this part of the footing is lifted off. Okay, so whatever this part is there, no, so this part will lose a contact between the soil. That means this contact will be lost, means what will happen? So this is very dangerous situation. So these situations should be avoided. So that what you have to do, then you have to redesign everything and then check whether you are getting any negative stresses here. Okay, so whenever you are getting negative stresses, then you have to change the dimension of your footing. Okay, so that is like a check for you. Okay, so if it is exactly 0, then it's fine. Okay, so that means only it is just to have a contact, but it is not lifted off in the air. But remaining portion is in contact, so whatever load is there, no, this Q load, this total load now only carried by this much area only. So this area will not carry any load. This area will not carry any load because it is we are getting any negative stresses here. So first that check I should do. What whether my eccentricity is less than b by 6 or greater than b by 6. Then you calculate your maximum stress and minimum stress, and make sure that your stresses will be positive. There should not be any negative stresses. If negative stress comes into picture, then what you have to do, you have to change the dimension of the footing. Either you increase the breadth, or you increase the length, or you increase both breadth and length as well. So this m is nothing but E times Q. Okay, so if you substitute m is equal to E into Q, then you will get these equations. Okay, so Q max, Q minimum, and Q max you have to calculate first. Q max and Q minimum you have to calculate. Okay, so suppose if eccentricity is greater than b by 6, what I told, your Q minimum will be 0, or sometimes what will happen, your Q minimum also can be negative. Okay, so what I told in my previous slide, this, if you get a negative stresses, then what you have to do, this situation must be avoided by redesigning the foundation. So negative stresses is nothing but there is no contact between the foundation and the soil. So that means the foundation, the footing will be in unstable condition. Okay, if the part of this foundation is lifted up due to your eccentric loading, what will happen? Gradually, the load, if you increase, then there will be some point where a total overturning may happen. Okay, so that's why you have to, that check we should do before designing whether my Q max and Q minimum are positive, or whether you are getting any negative stresses. Once you do that check, and then the procedure I will tell in the second in the next slide. Okay, so whatever this eccentricity we have seen, those are in the one direction only. Suppose if you have a eccentricity in two directions, okay, that means the column is off by in the breadth direction as well as in the length direction. You see, this is your column position, and this is your foundation. So it is off, not only off by your length direction, it is off by your breadth direction as well. Okay, so that is EL and EB. So EB is the eccentricity in the breadth direction, and EL is the eccentricity in the length direction. Then what you have to do, you have to take the in that bearing capacity equation, what I written earlier, that is Qn ultimate equal to that big equation was there, no, that CNC dash plus Qn Q some coefficient plus gamma B n gamma and some shape factors. Okay, so you see in this breadth direction is that this breadth, now this B will become B effective. Okay, so you have to take you can't take total B here. Okay, so now you have to take here in this equation B the reduced B you should take. That is B effective. What is this B effective? B effective is nothing but your total B minus 2 times your whatever eccentricity is there in the breadth direction. So that you should take. As well as in the length direction also, you have to take the effective length. That means total length minus 2 times your the eccentricity in the length direction. So your effect, as well as in the area calculations also, I have to take the effective area here. So what is the effective area? Effective area is nothing but B effective into L effective. That means reduced length and reduced breadth. So both, if you multiply, then reduced area I will get. Okay, so whatever load is coming on the foundation, that load will be registered by only this much area. So these all, whatever other area is there, they are not at all participating in taking that load, whatever the eccentric loading is coming. Okay. So this is how we will accommodate the eccentricity in bearing capacity calculations. So that means your whatever breadth is there, that breadth should be reduced breadth you should take. That is the B effective breadth you should take. Okay. So and also see while calculating those shape factors. Okay. So shape factors is like SC, DC, and IC, and SQ, DQ, and IQ, and S gamma, B gamma, I gamma. Okay, so these shape factors and depth factors are there. No, while calculating these shape factors and depth factors, also I should for calculating shape factors I should use the effective dimensions. But while calculating the depth factors, I should use total dimensions. Okay, so those things I have put it here. Okay, so this is the procedure how we can proceed to calculate the bearing capacity equations. Okay, so this is my bearing capacity equation from IS 6403. 6403. Okay, so in this B direction, see whatever B is there. Now earlier B was there. Now B dash. What is this B dash? This B dash is nothing but B times 2 times your eccentricity in the breadth direction. Okay. So what you have to do? This is the procedure to calculate the ultimate bearing capacity if you have a eccentric loading. Treat the footing as a centric one with a reduced contact area. What is the reduced contact area? That is L dash by B dash. So where L dash is nothing but L into 2 times eccentricity in the L direction. And what is B dash? B dash is nothing but B minus 2 times eccentricity in the breadth direction. Okay. So EL and EB are the eccentricity in the L and breadth, length and breadth directions. Okay. Now we should use B dash in the bearing capacity equation to calculate Q ultimate. That's what I written here. B dash I written. Then the shape and inclination factors are calculated based on your L dash and B dash dimension. Okay. So you should not use L and B. Okay. So while calculating shape factor and inclination factor, I should use L dash and B dash. But if while calculating the depth factor, what I will do, I will use L and B. I won't use L dash and B dash here. Okay, so I will use total length and total breadth, not the reduced length and the reduced breadth. I will use reduced length and reduced breadth to calculate what? Shape factor and the inclination factor. But while calculating the depth factor, I will use total length and total breadth. So it is possible that your breadth, after reducing the dimension, what will happen? It will it may happen so that your breadth may be greater than your length. Then what you have to do? You have to interchange these dimension. Okay, whatever lesser dimension is there, that you should take it as a breadth, and whatever higher dimension is there, that you should take it as a length dimension. Okay, so you can swap them after reducing. Then what is the final step here? Then Q net ultimate is equal to your Q ultimate minus gamma into dF, and factor of safety is nothing but your net ultimate divided by allowable load. So this is the procedure to calculate the bearing capacity of a foundation which has been subjected to eccentric loading. Understood? Okay. So based on the, eccentric loading also, I will solve one problem. Maybe tomorrow I will solve one problem. I will solve if at all, if you have a column which is positioned off by some distance from the center, then how to calculate the bearing capacity. Okay, so that I will take up that problem in my next class. Okay, so it's very rarely they ask the problems based on the eccentric loading in the question paper. But to be on the complete side, I will solve one problem to just clarify whatever procedure we have discussed here. Okay, so once we put it on paper with in terms of some example, then this procedure will be more convenient to understand. So my next topic is see, this comes in part B. Okay, so this is part B portion. So this part B portion, in this part B, what I will do, I will we have two tests to be performed. Okay, one is a standard penetration test and another one is the plate load test. Okay, okay, so these are the field tests with which we can calculate the bearing capacity. So whatever till now we discussed in our previous classes, so those are the those for those equations, what are the inputs we require? We require C and phi value, right? C and phi value we require to calculate those bearing capacity of a foundation from the our previous discussion. Okay, so this C and phi, it can be obtained from the laboratory test. From the lab test, we have obtained C and phi value. To obtain C value, I may conduct unconfined compressive strength, and to obtain phi value, I may conduct direct shear test. Okay, so those things you will learn in your 7th semester lab. Okay, so but those inputs are coming from the laboratory. But how to calculate the bearing capacity from we have some tests which can be performed in the field itself. From those inputs, we can calculate the bearing capacity. Those things we will discuss in these coming lectures. So one of the field test, very widely used field test, is standard penetration test. So SPT we will call short form, standard penetration test. Okay, so this is a very widely used test in the any soil exploration report. If you see any soil exploration report, you will see this SPT test. Okay, so in some special cases, if you have a very important structure, then we will do this plate load test also. Okay, so both can be utilized to calculate the bearing capacity. Okay, so we will discuss these tests. So first test I will discuss about the standard penetration test. Okay, so you see, so let me just explain this figure. So this figure consists of, you see, this is the hammer. So this is the donut hammer, and what you see here, we will drive this hammer to penetrate this. This is what your drilling tube or drilling rod. Okay, so in this drilling rod, we will attach some sampler will be there. That sampler we will attach, and we will try to drive this sampler inside the ground with the help of this hammer. Okay, and then we will calculate the energy. Okay, how much energy is required to penetrate to drive this sampler inside the ground with this hammer. So this height also is constant height. Okay, so some 750 mm height will be there. In that free fall, see this with this hammer and falling from a constant height, we will produce certain energy. Okay, so that with that energy will be utilized to drive this sampler inside the ground. Okay, so we will calculate the resistance offered by the ground for that penetration. Okay, so that we will calculate. So this is how we will do the standard penetration test. Okay, and see here, this is the plate load test. What you see, this is the plate we are applying. Okay, so this is the plate and this is the jack. Okay, so what will happen? So we will it is just like your how you will change your flat tire in your cars. Okay, so once the tire got punctured, how you will with the help of jack we will lift the car and then we will remove the wheel, right? So same mechanism is utilized here. Okay, so what will happen with this, whatever weight is there now here, this crane weight, we'll take that weight as a resistance, and we will apply this. See here, some we'll apply some pressure. Okay, so with that pressure, what will happen? It will try to lift that a crane here. Okay, so while lifting, what will happen? The equivalent opposite reaction will be applied on this plate. Okay, so that whatever reaction will happen, that plate it will try to penetrate this plate inside the ground. Okay, then we will measure that settlement. To calculate the settlement, we have some dial gauges here. You see, with the help of these dial gauges, we will measure this settlement of this plate, and then we will draw a plot between settlement as well as the applied pressure. Then we will get a curve. Okay, so with that curve, we can calculate the settlement as well as the bearing capacity of the soil. Okay, so this is my second test. So in detail, we will discuss in our today's class. Okay, so in today, I will plan to finish this standard penetration test, and in the tomorrow's class, I will take up this plate load test. So this is a schematic representation of the standard penetration test. You see, so this is your borehole. So this is the borehole. Inside that borehole, now there is a sampler here. Okay, so this sampler, split spoon sampler, we will call. Okay, so split spoon sampler. What will so this is the hammer. Okay, so this hammer weight is around 63.5 kg. This 63.5 kg hammer is there, and this is the guide rod or guide pipe also you can call. Okay, so in this, along with this guide rod, we will try to see what is the height of this guide rod. It will be 762 mm. Okay, so this guy, what you will do with the help of this rope and pulley mechanism, you will try to lift this weight for a height of 762 mm. Then he will release this one. He will release this rope, and this whatever 63.5 kg hammer is there, that will fall under gravity for a distance of 762 mm, and it will hit this anvil. Okay, so it will hit this anvil, and in turn that energy will be utilized to drive the sampler inside the ground. Okay, so here, so this is the sampler. Okay, so whatever this split spoon sampler I am talking now. So this is the split spoon sampler. Whatever, see, this is the drill rod. To this drill rod, we will attach this split spoon sampler. Okay, so this is the driving shoe. Okay, so this is the driving shoe, and this is the split spoon sampler, and this is the coupler. Sorry. So this coupler is there. This coupler we will attach to the drilling rod. Once we attach the drilling rod, this cutting shoe will be attached there at the bottom. Okay, then we will drive this sampler inside the ground with the help of this hammer. Then what will happen? The soil will be cut, and it will be stored inside this sampler. Okay, so here the soil will be collected inside this sampler. Then we will, since it is a split spoon sampler, we can cut it into a half part. Okay, so some grooves will be there. So if we remove that groove, it will become 2 parts. Okay, so that we can remove the whatever soil sample collected inside this sampler, inside the split spoon sampler. Okay, so what are the dimensions of this split spoon sampler? Okay, so this split spoon sampler dimension is outside diameter. See, if can you see here, inside diameter is around 38 mm, and outside diameter is around 51 mm, and length will be around 762 mm length. Now the more detailed picture here. See, this is the hammer. Hammer weight of 63.5 kg, and this is the anvil. So this hammer will be falling under a gravity for a distance of 762 mm, and in turn this is the drill rod, and this is the split spoon sampler. This is your split spoon sampler, and this split spoon sampler will be attached to the this coupler, and then this coupler in turn is attached to this drilling rod. Okay, so with and the dimensions are given here: outside dimension, inside dimension, and the length of the sampler. Okay, so perhaps it is the most popular field test. Okay, so this is very widely used. Okay, so irrespective of any project, this is a very common test to be performed while doing your soil exploration. Okay, so that is your standard penetration test. Okay, so if you refer IS 2131, it will talks about all the procedure IS 2131. So perhaps the most popular field test, and it is mainly used for the granular soil. That means a sandy type of soil. Okay, so even the people will use this test for clays, but results is not that reliable. Okay, so always you may the results may mislead. Okay, so it is widely used in granular soil. Some people even they will use it for clay, but whatever results you will get from those tests, it is unreliable. It is more reliable in granular soil and less reliable in the clay type of soil, especially this standard penetration test. Okay, so what are the results we will get from this SPT test? We will get a N value. N value is nothing but it is the number of blows required for the penetration of this sampler inside the ground by 30 centimeter depth. Okay, so that resistance is given in terms of N value. Okay. Then whatever sample we will get, that is highly disturbed soil sample. It is highly disturbed soil sample, and that soil sample can be used only to find out the index properties, like your sieve analysis or like to find out the specific gravity. Only for the index properties only you can do. You cannot use this soil sample for the in lab to calculate the engineering properties. Now we will see the procedure. What is the procedure here? You see, step by step we will see. First procedure is a 35 mm internal diameter and 50 mm external diameter split spoon barrel sampler with sharp cutting edge is attached to drill rod and placed at the bottom of the borehole. Okay, so this split spoon sampler is there. So that outside diameter and inside diameter and length. Okay, so these are the dimensions of those split spoon sampler. This split spoon sampler is attached to the drill rod, and now you place this split spoon sampler along with the drill rod at the bottom of your borehole. Okay, so this is your borehole. In the bottom of the borehole, you will place this split spoon sampler along with the drill rod. Now, what we will do second step? Second step is the sampler is driven into the ground by a 63.5 kg hammer that is repeatedly dropped from a height of 760 mm. That means, you see, this sampler is driven inside the ground with the help of the 63.5 kg hammer falling under a gravity for a distance of 760 mm or 0.76 meter. Now, what is the third step? The number of blows required to achieve 3 subsequent 150 mm penetration is recorded. That means on this split spoon sampler, I have to make some marking here. Okay, so at every 15 centimeter marking, this is for first 15 centimeter, second 15 centimeter, and third 15 centimeter. I have to do some marking on this split spoon sampler. Okay, then we will calculate the number of blows required for the first 15 centimeter penetration. Okay, so suppose I have got around some 10 blows. Okay, so in that 10 blows, I can able to penetrate this first 15 centimeter penetration. Okay, and then for the second 15 centimeter penetration, I would have got around some 20 number of blows. So, and for the third penetration, I would have got something around some 25 number of blows. Now your SPT N value is, you have to add this one and this one you have to add. You have to neglect this one. That means for the first 15 centimeter penetration, whatever number of blows are there, no, that you neglect it. You count only 20 plus 25, around 45. Okay, so that means 45 number of blows are required for the penetration of this sampler. Okay, so now my N value is 45. Okay, so my N value is now 45. So why I have to neglect this first 15 centimeter? First 15 centimeter, why I should neglect it? Because see, before inserting this split spoon sampler, what would with the help of your drilling equipment, you would have drilled the soil sample. Okay, so whatever this, while drilling, what will happen, this 15 centimeter usually will be already disturbed with the help with that drilling mechanism. So that's why now if the soil sample for this 15 centimeter is already disturbed before placing your split spoon sampler itself, usually it will offer less resistance for the penetration. That's why we will neglect this first 15 centimeter. We will neglect, only we will count the number of blows required for the penetration of next 30 centimeter penetration. Okay, that's what I explained here. Okay, so first 15 centimeter we will neglect because that will be considered as a seating drying. Because already while that first 15 centimeter would have disturbed by your drill bit. Then what will happen finally? The sampler is withdrawn, detached from the drill rod, and the soil sample is collected and carefully packed and sent to the laboratory. Okay, so important note here. What is the note here? You have to abandon that test provided these three conditions are met. That means you have to stop the test if 50 blows are required for the 0.15 meter penetration, that is around 15 centimeter penetration. Okay, so if you require 50 blows for the 15 centimeter penetration, then you should stop the test. Or if you require 100 blows for the 30 centimeter penetration, then also you should stop the test. Or if 10 successive blows produces no advancement of that split spoon sampler, then also you should stop the test. Okay, so what will happen if successive 10 blows is not able to penetrate the soil sampler inside the ground? That means what? The resistance is very high. Okay, the resistance of the ground for the penetration is very high. If you still further, if you proceed with more than 10 blows, what will happen? You may damage the your sampler. Okay, so what will happen if you keep on hitting this sampler inside the ground with the help of 63.5 kg, even though the resistance is very high, what will happen? This sampler will get damaged. Okay, so this sampler will cost quite a bit amount of. Okay, so that's why, to avoid that, if successive 10 blows is not producing any penetration, that means what? Your ground is very hard. Your ground is very hard. That's why it is not able to penetrate inside the soil. So that means that will be your refusal. So that you count it as a refusal. So if you encounter these three conditions, you should stop the test. Otherwise, you will harm that sampler. You will damage that sampler. Understood? Okay, so another schematic, same figure. See, the sampler, drill rod, anvil, and hammer. Okay, so first what I will do, I will first 15 centimeter. This is the first 15 centimeter penetration. 15 centimeter. Okay, so and then this is the second 15 centimeter penetration, and this is the third 15 centimeter penetration. So for this 15 centimeter penetration, I have got 10 blows. For this 15 centimeter penetration, I have got 20 blows. For this 15 centimeter, I got 25 number of blows. So my N value will be what? 20 plus 25, 45. 45 is my N value. So this 10 will be neglected. Why it is neglected? Because already this 15 centimeter soil depth is there. No, this much soil is already disturbed by your drill rod or drill bit. Okay, that's why we will avoid this. We will not count this 10 number of blows required for the first 15 centimeter penetration. Okay, that is called as a seating load. We will call. Understood, no? So I will explain once again. See, what you have to do first. You have to take a split spoon sampler and then attach that split spoon sampler to the drill rod Okay, then you drive this split spoon sampler with the help of 63.5 kg hammer, and falling this 63.5 kg will be falling under gravity for a distance of 76 or 760 mm height. Okay, so then we will count the number of blows required for the 3 successive 15 centimeter penetration, and then we will neglect first 15 centimeter. Now whatever number of blows required for the first 15 centimeter we will neglect, and we will add up the number of blows required for the successive second and third penetration. Okay, that will give me my n value. That is my standard penetration n value. So this n value is there. Now this n value will take up, and this n value essentially what it is telling. This essentially it is telling how hard the soil is. This soil, if n value is high means what? If n value is higher, then the resistance is more. If n value is reducing means what you will have a very loose soil. If n value is very high, then you have a very hard soil. That conclusion you can draw by looking at the n value. Okay, so here in the last semester for your senior, I took for some field visit. Okay, so in the field visit, this test has been carried out in our BLD medical campus. Okay, so in the medical campus, they were coming up with some multi-specialty hospital. So before constructing that multi-specialty hospital, we have done this borehole drilling. Okay, so in this borehole drilling, first this is the equipment for the borehole drilling. Okay, so once we will drill a borehole, see now drilling is going on. Okay, so that's why hammer is sitting on this ground here. Okay, so now the drilling process is going on. Once the drilling is over, what will happen? They will remove this. See, these are the drill rods. These are the drill rods. And once the drilling is over, what will happen? You will remove the drill bit, and then see. Can you see here? This is your split spoon sampler. This one. This is your split spoon sampler. So this split spoon sampler will attach to the drill rod. We will remove that driller bit, and then we'll attach this hammer. We'll attach this hammer, and then we'll try to drive this sampler inside the soil. Okay. So this is another picture from the back side. Okay, so this is, you see, this is the oil engine, and this oil engine will give a power for this. What you will see here is some coupler will be there. Okay, so with this coupler, this rotation will take place. So once the rotation will take place, usually bottom coil will be there. That to be cut under that your thrust, rotational thrust, as well as the rotation. In that combined mechanism, coil will be cut. Okay, and if you see here small bit, can you see here bit? Here will drilling mud will be there. Okay, so this drilling mud will be circulated inside this drill rod, so that your borehole will be stabilized, and as well as it will be act like a lubricant for while cutting that soil. Okay. And this is another view. Okay, so this is the oil engine with it will transfer this power to the drill rod. With this power, the drill rod will rotate, and then it will cut the soil sample. Okay, so now what I will do, before going to apply certain corrections, I want to show some video of this test. Okay, so let me go to this. See here, I have put some links I put here. Okay, so with this link, let me take this link. Go here, paste it, and then before that, before going to that video, so anything if you want to discuss, anything, any doubts regarding the standard penetration test? Shall we go for that video, or you want to ask any questions? Priyadarshini, Abhishek, Prajwal?
No, sir.
No doubt. Okay, so shall we go for that video of that SPT test?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
See, these are the drill rods. Whatever now, what they are doing, they are removing. See, before performing, they would see there is another in situ test that is called as pressure meter test. Okay. Anyway, that pressure meter test is not in your syllabus. So you can hear my voice now. While playing this video, are you able to hear my voice? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what they are doing now, they are removing the sampler. This is pressure meter test, they will call. Okay. So anyway, that is not in your syllabus, but pressure meter test also one of the important in situ test. So what they are doing, they are removing that pressure meter test bulb. They are removing, and now they are attaching that split spoon sampler. Okay. So just watch. In the meanwhile, there is no audio here. Okay, so I will keep on explaining the procedure, what they are doing. Okay, so just listen to that, just see that video as well as listen to my voice also. So this is the pressure meter bulb, and this is your split spoon sampler. Can you see? This is split spoon sampler. Now they are taking that split spoon sampler and now they are inserting inside the borehole. See here, they are attaching that drill rod. This is drill rod, and for this drill rod, this is your drill rod. From here, it is a drill rod. To this drill rod, they are attaching the split spoon sampler. Okay, so this is your split spoon sampler. So now they are inserting inside the borehole. Okay, drill rod as well as the split spoon sampler. They are inserting inside the borehole. Now they are taking another drill rod because they are testing at a deeper depth. Okay, so at a very higher depth. So that's why they are attaching one more drill rod here. You see, this is one more drill rod. So one drill rod plus split spoon sampler already went inside the ground, and this is the second drill rod they are inserting. Since they are carrying out the SPT test at a larger depth, that's why there are two drill rods here. Okay, so another drill rod went inside the ground. See, they attached the anvil. Okay, so this is the anvil. Now hammer. See, this is the hammer they are attaching. Okay, so this is this is a different kind of hammer. Okay, so whatever in picture I have shown, those are the donut hammer. These are the automatic hammers. Okay, so in the little bit advanced the hammer it is. Okay, so that I will come to while doing correction factors. I will come again for this about this hammer. Okay, so just don't confuse. This is one kind of hammer. Okay, now they are attached. Sorry. So this is now they are attaching some hammer here. Okay, so let us proceed the video. Now, can you see what he is doing here? He is marking on the drill rod. He is marking with 15 centimeter distance. 3 markings he will do. Okay, so one mark, another mark, and another mark at a distance of 15 centimeter. 3 markings he will do. You see, with his hand. See, he is having some oil on the hand, so he is just marking on that at a 15 centimeter interval. He will mark. Now you see the hammer will fall under a height of 750 mm. Okay. Can you see? See, this is the hammer, and it is falling under a constant height. Okay, so this height will be 750 mm. Okay, and this hammer weight will be 63.5 kg. Okay, and then he will count. See, he marked here. Okay, so 3 markings he has done. No. So for the to penetrate first 15 centimeter, he will count how many number of blows are required, and then for the second 15 centimeter penetration, how many number of blows are required, and for the third 15 centimeter penetration, again he will count number of blows, and then he will add up all the blows except for the first 15 centimeter penetration. Okay, so we will continue with this video. See, it is offering a lot of resistance for the penetration. Okay, so that's why it is taking more number of blows. See, almost one marking is already penetrated inside. Then he will count again for the next 15 centimeter. See, for the first, you see here 13 blows are required for the first 15 centimeter penetration. Can you see here 13 blows they written here? Okay, so 13 blows, and the next in the see 50 blows are required for the 14 centimeter penetration. That's why they removed out. Okay, so they are not able to penetrate further. That's why for the 50 blows they removed. So otherwise, if they still keep on going, then what will happen? Your this split spoon sampler will get damaged. Okay, so these 13 blows they will neglect, and the n count they will write it as 50 blows for the 14 centimeter penetration. That is like your refusal, almost refusal. See, now they are removing the that split spoon sampler from that drill rod. See, this is drill rod, and this is your split spoon sampler. Now they are removing that split spoon sampler. See, here they removed this driving shoe. This is the driving shoe, and now you see they will remove this split spoon sampler. Okay, so this is how the soil is collected here. Can you see this soil? Okay, so this soil they will pack up in the one polythene bag, and then they will send this to the laboratory, and then further tests can be done in the laboratory. Okay, so like that, some 3 links I given here. Okay, so another these 2 you can watch it on your free time. Okay, so let us come to the test here. Okay, so not this. Okay, so now you are familiar about the procedure. Okay, So whatever n value we will get from the field, no? So that for that n value, there are some corrections has to be applied. Okay. So what are those corrections? We will see in these slides. Okay. There are three corrections we supposed to apply. Okay. So first correction is the energy correction. Okay. What is the energy correction? You see, the energy corrections has to be applied because of loss of energy in the form of pulley friction and friction in the guide rod and vibration of a drill rod. Okay, so because of these loss in energy, I have to apply some energy correction. Because see, so what is the total energy applied on the sampler if you don't have these all losses? Okay, so these are the losses. Okay, so for example, I will show the picture here. See, these drill rods will be there. No, if this drill rod is a little bit bent, so over the years, what will happen? Because of wear and tear, these drill rods will be a little bit bent. Okay, so once it is bent, what will happen? Whatever energy is transferring from this hammer, it is not fully transferred to the. It is not fully utilized in driving that sampler inside the soil. Okay, so that's why due to bending of these drill rod, or if this hammer is, and also see while lifting hammer, there will be some friction inside, friction between the hammer and as well as the guide rod. So that also some source of a loss of energy. Okay, so to account all these, we have to apply energy correction. So in ideal situation, okay, so in the ideal situation, total how much energy will be input in will be utilized while driving the sampler. So this is what is the energy? Energy is nothing but your mass, gravity into height. So what is mass of my hammer? Mass of hammer is 63.5 kg. And what is the gravity on earth? On earth, gravity is 9.8. And what is the height of fall of this hammer? 762 mm or 0.762 meter. So if you multiply, I will get 475 joules. So this entire 475 joules is not utilized while driving the sampler because of some losses. What are those losses? Usually, it is observed that 30% of energy is lost due to pulley friction, friction due to that pulley, and then friction in the guide rod and vibration of the drill rod. Okay, so altogether, how much percentage is lost? 30% of energy is lost. That means only 475 into 0.3%. That much energy only utilized while drilling the sampler. Okay, so what is the actual energy input? Actual energy is only 30 to 80% of your total energy. See, very huge. So 30% only utilized. That means around 70% is lost. Energy is lost, and this will happen if you do a test by a very unprofessional way. Like your drill rod is bent, and also there are no supervisors inside that while doing that test. Okay, so the losses may be in the range of 30 to 80%. So usually what will happen if you have a very well reputed, if you perform this test with according to IS code, or if you hire some very well reputed companies, no, then they will usually, what will happen, they will have a very new instruments. Okay, so if you have a new instrument, what will happen? The energy loss will be very less. Maybe 30% you may lose, or 20%. Okay, so 30 to 20% loss will be there if you have a new instrument. Okay, so if you have a very old instrument, then you see 70 to 50% will be lost. Energy will be lost. Okay, that means actual energy input is only 30 to 50% if you have an old instrument. If you have a new instrument, what will happen? Your actual energy is 70 to 80%. So that's why after applying the energy correction, my N, earlier in the field I got N value. If I apply an energy correction, now it will become N70. So N70 is nothing but your field value N, like whatever in my example I took, no, like 45. So 45 was my N value from the field. Okay, so 45 into E actual divided by E input. Okay, so what is E actual? E actual may be like 30 to 80% you can take. So that is my correction due to energy loss. So this is correction due to energy loss. Okay, so once you apply that correction, you will get N70. Now N become N70 after applying the energy correction. That means what will happen? You may reduce your number of blows counted in the this one, or you may increase also depending on your ratio of E actual and to the E input. Okay, so E input is how much? E input is 475 joules, and E actually is what? E actual will be 70% of your E input. That is 70% of your 475 joules. Okay, that ratio multiply by your N value will give me N70. Okay, so the N70 is nothing but it is the number of blows after applying the energy correction. Okay, now, so that was the one kind of corrections we have done. So another kind of correction is overburden correction. Okay, so you have to apply this overburden correction. So what will happen in several investigators, what they found, usually this in granular soil, this N values will be altered depending on your overburden pressure. Okay, so I will take one example here. Suppose this is your ground. So this is your ground at 1 meter depth. You have done the SPT test at 1 meter depth. The same soil is continued. Okay, so the same soil is continued for the depth of up to 5 meter. So same soil, like sand is there, and same soil and same density. Okay, so same relative density. So if you have same relative density, then you should get the same N value whether you perform at 1 meter depth or 5 meter depth. But you won't get same N value because of overburden pressure. Okay, so here overburden pressure will be less. That's why you will get a very less amount of N value. So if you perform the same test in the same soil with the same relative density at 5 meter depth, then N value will be more here. Here N value will be more because of overburden pressure. Because of this overburden pressure. So in ideal situation, you should get same N value. If you have a relative density same, then you should get same N value. But that won't happen in practical situation because of this overburden. So that's why we have to apply this overburden correction. So how to apply this overburden correction? You see. So once you apply the from the energy correction, I got N70 dash. So for this N70 dash, now I will apply the overburden correction. So this is Cn into N70. So N70 is nothing but after your energy correction, the number of blows after your energy correction, then multiply with the Cn value. What is this Cn value? The Cn is the correction factor for overburden pressure. So correction factor for the overburden pressure. So how to get this correction factor? So IS code will give you, IS 2131 is there, no? They will give you one chart here. Okay, so in this chart, see here, this is the correction of N value, correction of N value in corrosion-less soil, and this is your Cn value, your y-axis. Okay, suppose my N value is suppose my N, see here you can enter in the x-axis, and then you can get the corresponding Cn value here. So from this graph, I will get a Cn value. Okay. So from that graph, you can put that Cn value and then multiply your N70. That will become N70 dash. N70 dash. Okay. So this is after energy correction. Energy correction plus your overburden correction. overburden correction. Okay, so after applying the both correction, now I got N70 dash. Okay, so this is my second correction. So I have another correction, that is a dilatancy correction. That is, this is the third correction factor. So usually this dilatancy correction, to apply this dilatancy correction, we will use this. Okay, so once we apply the dilatancy correction, your N70 dash becomes N70 double dash. Okay, so N70 double dash is equal to 15 plus 0.5 into N70 dash minus 15. Okay, that means the dilatancy correction will be applicable only if your N70 is greater than 50. So if your N70 is not greater than 50, then no need to apply this dilatancy correction. So this is the formula to apply your dilatancy correction. So 15 plus 0.5 into N70 dash. N70 dash is what? It is nothing but already your energy correction is applied and overburden correction is applied. That N value you should take minus 15. Okay, so this dilatancy correction is applicable only if your N70 dash is more than 50. So these are the three corrections should be applied. Then only that N value you have to take, and then proceed to this figure. Okay, your SBC, your IS6403. I shown you, in IS6403. I shown this graph in our previous class. Okay, so here you see that N70 dash, whatever you have got now, that N70 dash you come here. Suppose my N70 double dash is 30. Take 30 and then go to here and then pick up this number. So my phi value will be 36 degree. That is our angle of internal friction. So that for that corresponding phi value, take NC, NQ, and N gamma, and then put it in this equation, and then I can calculate the bearing capacity of the soil. So this is again from IS6403. Again, this chart is also available in IS6403. Okay. So once you got corrected N value, this is corrected N value take, and then come to here, see, and then pick the phi value. Suppose your corrected N value is 30, then soil is called as a dense soil. See, if your corrected N value is something around 10, then it will be very, like you see 10 is very medium, not even medium, loose you can call, very loose. So this is the chart where you will get the angle of internal friction from N values, standard penetration N values. So let us see this table. Okay, just to give some feel about numbers here. Okay, so no need to remember. Okay, don't remember these all table. Just for your what you call to have some feel about these numbers. Suppose your N value is 4. Suppose your N value is 4. That kind of soil is called as very loose soil. Suppose your N value is between 4 to 10, then you will call that soil as a loose soil. Very loose, loose. And if your N value is in between 10 to 30, 10 to 30, then you can call it that soil as a medium soil, medium dense soil I can call. If your N value is 30 to 50, then very dense soil. If your N value is more than 50, then it is very dense. So this table is applicable for the cohesion-less soil. Cohesion-less soil means what? Sandy type of soil. Okay. So here I'm correlating between N value and the density or denseness of the soil. Okay. And look at this figure, this table. This table is for the cohesion soil. Cohesion soil means your clays. So anyway, I told in the beginning itself, SPT test is not that reliable on clay type of soil, but still people will use the SPT test in clays because it is a very cheap test, not that much cheaper, but relatively cheaper. and also you need not to have a well-trained engineer. Okay, so even you can perform this test with your laborers also. You don't have to deploy any engineer there. Okay, so with the help of with the diploma graduate or with the help of some experienced laborers, you can perform this test. Okay, that's why usually people will prefer this test more often. Okay. So here for the cohesion soil, if you have a n value between 0 to 2, your undrained cohesion will have around 12 kPa, and the soil will be called as very soft soil. Okay, when you will call as a very soft soil, if your thumb can penetrate for 25 mm, that kind of soil are called as very soft soil. Okay, if your thumb can penetrate maybe equal to 25 mm, then you can call it as a soft soil. And if you are not able to, even if thumb nail cannot put any inundation on the soil, then that soil is called as very hard soil. In that hard soil, you will get n value greater than 30. So these tests, these tables will be helpful once you start practicing. Once you start your career. Okay, so during that time, these tables are useful. Okay, so these tables are not useful for your exam purpose. Okay, so these tables I put only for to have some feel about n value. Okay, so someone is telling my n, so I got n value of 10. Then you suddenly, if you recall this table, okay, so the soil is a little bit loose. You can make a judgment here. Okay, so if someone is telling your n value is 50, then you can suddenly draw a conclusion that the soil is dense soil. Okay, so for that purpose I have put these tables. Okay, so don't try to mug up these tables. So these tables will be helpful once you start your career, not for your examination purpose. So should I write here, not for exam, not for exam, and this is also not for exam. I should write your weekly exam. Okay, so this is about your standard penetration test. What we did in today's class, first we discussed the eccentric loading. In the eccentric loading we have done, and then how to calculate your maximum intensity and minimum intensity. So let me view. I will remove this gridded lines. Okay, so now I think it will be more clear. Okay, so first we started with eccentric loading, and then one-way eccentric loading and two-way eccentric loading we have seen, and then how to calculate the bearing capacity in the eccentric loaded footings. Okay, and then we started with your field test. Okay, so in the field test we discussed the standard penetration test. Okay, so in the standard penetration test we have seen what is the split spoon sampler, and what is the procedure to carry out the standard penetration test, and how to count the number of blows required for the penetration, and also what are the corrections to be applied. So first correction is energy correction, then overburden correction, then dilatancy correction. And also I have put some video links here. You can watch it in your free time. Okay, so in the next class, what I will do, I will start your plate load test. So Thursday I don't have any class. Friday, what I will do, I will take in the morning. See, I have arranged one is a guest lecture from one of my friend who is working in some company. So I requested him, and he on Friday he will give one guest lecture. Okay, so I will, anyway, that detail about that I will send in the WhatsApp group by today. Okay, so in the evening on Friday, that guest lecture will be there. So he is a well-known practitioner. Okay, so they are doing these wind turbines will be there. No? So these wind turbine foundations they will design. Okay, so that company is specialized in that wind turbine foundation design. Okay, so I requested him to give one guest lecture. So he is readily accepted, and he is going to give that lecture. So please join on Friday. Okay, so the details about the lecture talk and his biodata, everything I will share in the WhatsApp group. Okay, so make yourself free on Friday evening. Okay, So from maybe from 5 o'clock. Okay, around 40 minutes only the lecture will be there. So please attend that lecture. So you will get some of how in industry the foundations will be designed. Okay, so that feel you will get. Okay, so that's why I requested him. So he is readily accepted. So we will have that test. We will have that guest lecture on Friday. Okay. So any doubts regarding today's lecture? So what I will do, I will stop recording here. Stop recording.